USCIS to add special agents with new law enforcement authorities. The Trump administration is driving major changes in U.S. immigration policy by expanding enforcement powers, tightening citizenship requirements, and boosting recruitment for immigration officers. This video marks a significant shift in how immigration is managed and enforced. If you're interested in this topic, please pay attention and watch the video through to the end to get all the information. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for an upcoming video. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is now authorized to expand its law enforcement authorities and newly minted USCIS 1811 classified officers, commonly known as special agents, will be empowered to investigate, arrest, and present for prosecution those who violate America's immigration laws under a final rule published today. In the final rule, the DHS authorities provided to USCIS include making arrests, carrying firearms, executing search and arrest warrants, and other powers standard for federal law enforcement. This rule allows USCIS to implement Homeland Security Kristi, Noem's delegation of certain law enforcement authorities to the agency. This rule allows USCIS to thoroughly fulfill its national security, fraud detection, and public safety missions related to immigration adjudications. USCIS has always been an enforcement agency. By upholding the integrity of our immigration system, we enforce the laws of this nation. As Secretary Noem delegated lawful authorities to expand the agency's law enforcement capabilities, this rule allows us to fulfill our critical mission. This historic moment will better address immigration crimes, hold those that perpetrate immigration fraud accountable, and act as a force multiplier for DHS and our federal law enforcement partners, including the Joint Terrorism Task Force, said USCIS Director Joseph Edlow. Through this delegation, the USCIS Director has the authority to order expedited removal and investigate civil and criminal violations of the immigration laws within the jurisdiction of USCIS. USCIS will have greater capacity to support DHS efforts by handling investigations from start to finish, instead of referring certain cases to Homeland Security investigation within U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This will allow ICEHSI and ERO to focus on disrupting transnational crime and capturing and deporting illegal aliens. USCIS will be able to more efficiently clear its backlogs of aliens who seek to exploit our immigration system through fraud, prosecute them, and remove them from the country. USCIS plans to recruit and train special agents who will exercise the additional law enforcement authorities. For more details, see the final rule in the Federal Register. The rule is effective 30 days from publication. Trump administration aims to make U.S. citizenship tests more difficult. The Trump administration is planning to make the U.S. citizenship test more difficult, according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Joseph Edlow, who spoke at the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington on Thursday. Dig deeper. Edlow said to the think tank that the current test is just too easy and argued that people can be coached on how to pass people who may not qualify for citizenship under U.S. law. A question of simply, hey, name 2 federal holidays and, name 1 branch of government, or name your governor. It's simply not enough, he said. We need to know more, especially if we're going to really understand whether someone has a true attachment to the Constitution, as required by the statute. The current test requires that applicants for citizenship correctly respond to at least 6 out of 10 questions drawn from a list of 100 questions available online. Applicants must also prove they possess basic English skills. Proposed changes. Edlow said that the test needs to be more thought-provoking, and added that applicants may be required to write an essay outlining what becoming an American means to them. He also said the test may move toward a standardized format. Edlow embraced the idea that USCIS is an enforcement agency in his remarks Thursday as well. I am declaring war on fraud, he said. I am declaring war on anyone that is coming to this country and wants to get a benefit, but doesn't want the responsibility of what it means to actually be a U.S. citizen. Along with Edlow's remarks, USCIS submitted a final rule on Thursday that will expand the agency's law enforcement apparatus. In a press release, the agency argues that having its own special agents who work with other law enforcement will help combat cases of fraud. Having agents there who can help do detective work and investigate some of these cases is going to help us get to the right decision and make these decisions so we can move forward with the integrity of the system, Edlow said. Trump and immigration. Big picture view. These proposed changes to the citizenship test are just the latest example of the Trump administration bearing down on the U.S. immigration system even further during the president's second term. President Trump vowed on a campaign trail to build the largest deportation operation in history, and so far, he's been fairly successful in his efforts. For example, USCIS recently said it would resume interviewing immigration applicants' co-workers and neighbors, a practice that's been paused since the first Bush administration. The Republican-controlled U.S. Senate also passed a budget reconciliation bill in July that included an unprecedented allocation of funds for immigration detention and enforcement. The bill was passed with Vice President J.D. Vance contributing the tie-breaking vote. Furthermore, the Department of Homeland Security is seeking to hire 10,000 new immigration and customs enforcement officers and 3,000 customs and border protection agents by the end of 2025. To get to those numbers, Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, has been advertising substantial incentives for ICE recruits, such as a $50,000 signing bonus and as much as $60,000 in student loan repayment. The agency has also expanded its officer recruitment age, which was generally 21 to 40, to all people 18 and up. Training periods have been shortened as well. In August, Trump even invoked the D.C. Home Rule Act to place the Metropolitan Police Department under federal control, citing the need to combat violent crime in the nation's capital. In his administration's periodic updates on the takeover, there's been an emphasis on the undocumented migrants that have been arrested. During a situational update on the federal law enforcement presence in the district last week, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowles said that she senses a lot of anxiety in D.C. right now and added that federal officers need to be less focused on immigration enforcement and more on violence. And earlier this week, Trump said that he plans to direct federal law enforcement intervention in Chicago and Baltimore, but offered no timetable. He's proposed doing the same in other Democratic-controlled cities across the U.S. as well. Trump's private army inside the push to recruit 10,000 immigration officers. The last time the U.S. dramatically expanded its force of immigration officers, major problems arose. Some border agents recruited in the 2000s turned out to be cartel members. One kidnapped and raped 3 women in his custody. 2 others were convicted of off-duty murders. Now, as Donald Trump vows to build the largest deportation operation in history and kicks off a huge recruitment spree, human rights advocates and former Department of Homeland Security officials are warning that misconduct and violence by officers could increase as a result. Bolstered by an unprecedented $170 billion in funding for immigration and border enforcement activities, the DHS is seeking to hire 10,000 new immigration and customs enforcement officers and 3,000 customs and border protection agents by the end of the year. In its desperate race to staff up and meet the aggressive goal of 3,000 immigration-related arrests a day set by Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, the DHS is now advertising substantial incentives for ICE recruits. That includes a signing bonus of up to $50,000 and as much as $60,000 in student loan repayment. It has expanded the officer recruitment age, which was generally 21 to 40, to all people 18 and over, and has shortened training periods to get agents in the field faster. It has launched a prolific social media campaign featuring memes and imagery that critics say echo white supremacist ideologies. In the past, U.S. officials have repeatedly dismissed misconduct or even crimes by immigration officers as anomalies. Watchdog, however, argue corruption and abuse within ICE and CBP is rampant and that the White House's hiring tactics threaten to supercharge problems. Abusive practices, misconduct, and a sense of impunity have long existed within these agencies, said Pedro Rios, director of the American Friends Service Committee's U.S./Mexico border program, which tracks officer misconduct. There are systemic problems with accountability and a culture of violence. Daily misconduct. When the Border Patrol nearly doubled its workforce between 2005 and 2011, expanding from 11,300 to 21,400 agents, hiring guidelines were changed and training requirements were loosened, according to the Associated Press. Agents were rushed through the academy before background checks were done. Ralph Basham, George W. Bush's CBP commissioner, told Politico magazine in 2014, "We made some mistakes. We found out later that we did, in fact, hire cartel members. Reports of misconduct by immigration officers increased. Nearly one CBP officer was arrested for misconduct every day from 2005 to 2012, Politico found. CBP shootings and use of force complaints surged from 2007 to 2012. In 2018, a Border Patrol agent was arrested for killing 4 women. The same year, another agent was arrested for killing his girlfriend and their baby, and 3 other CBP officers were accused of sexually assaulting a colleague on office furniture they deemed a rape table. In 2019, dozens of Border Patrol agents were caught in a racist Facebook group. In recent years, former agents were convicted of kidnapping, sexual assault, and accepting cartel bribes, and there were continued reports of sexual assault behind bars. The problems of overreach, abuse, and weak accountability at DHS stretch across presidential administrations, said Spencer Reynolds, senior counsel for the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center, a nonprofit. These issues are baked into a department that has very broad mandates and operates with significant discretion. The hiring spree could exacerbate those problems. In addition to expanding the age eligibility, the DHS was speeding up onboarding for new hires by condensing training from 13 weeks to 8, officials recently told NBC News, and reducing Spanish classes, firearms courses, and classroom instruction. The existing training, advocates say, was already failing to prevent misconduct. Michelle Brain, the former immigration detention ombudsman under Joe Biden, said that she was concerned that it appears that some ICE and CBP officers have a very poor understanding of the law when you're allowed to arrest somebody, when you need a warrant, what is a valid warrant, or even basics about how people are supposed to enter the country, and that was before training period was shortened. Some agents wrongly believed people could apply for asylum from Mexico or cross the border at port of entry that CBP had. In fact, blocked off ignorance that could fuel agents' anger at immigrants, she said. It creates resentment among staff, and that's when people start to get dehumanized and you get really horrific treatment. They want to be Trump's private army. The DHS's hiring incentives and expanding eligibility suggest it could be struggling to meet the White House's recruitment goals, though I said last month it had received more than 100,000 applications in 2 weeks. Lillian Serrano, director of the Southern Border Communities Coalition, an advocacy group, said the DHS had long recruited in low-income communities where there are minimal prospects for good jobs. Some see Border Patrol as a way of getting a well-paid job that will lift them and their families out of poverty, even though that job means targeting their own communities. Serrano was particularly concerned that Trump's recruitment was targeting youth, with events at schools and border communities. Serrano's coalition has tracked Border Patrol misconduct and killing for years and has seen agents' behavior worsen this year. She said, "The shift has been immediate, with agents being more emboldened to openly violate their own policies, even when they know they're being recorded. Rapid recruitment would worsen those problems," she said. Scott Schuchart, a former senior ICE official under Biden, said he was concerned about white supremacists and violent extremists getting hired as the DHS lowers its standards and speeds up enrollment. The scary ones are the people who want to be Trump's private army, the insurrectionists, the Proud Boys, the Klansmen, and others who might be coming out of the woodwork. Historically, efforts to prevent the hiring of officers prone to crimes were more focused on cartel ties, though the January 6th insurrection, which saw off-duty officers from across the country joining rioters, made officials more aware of the threats of far-right infiltration and recruitment, Schuchart said. While background checks might still block the hiring of white supremacists with criminal records, he said he doubted there were any efforts targeted at weeding out these ideologies in recruitment. Those fears have been exacerbated by the message in the DHS's online recruitment efforts, and as the DHS has celebrated its harsh treatment of immigrants, whether with the department's secretary, Kristi Noem, filming herself at an El Salvador prison with men jam-packed into a cell, or the DHS posting a meme of alligators as ICE agents in Florida. Recent DHS recruitment advertisements have used language like defend your culture, secure the golden age, and want to deport illegals with your absolute boys? OneX.com recruitment post featured an Uncle Sam image and said, "Which way? American man." which observers quickly pointed out was similar to the title of a 1978 white nationalist book that defended Hitler. The DHS said it was conveying that Uncle Sam was at a crossroads, pondering which way America should go. The message is, we are intentionally causing harm in order to encourage people to leave voluntarily, said Brain. Cruelty is the point, and they seem proud of it. I worry you now have recruits coming in with the idea that they are there to harm immigrants and be as cruel as possible. It is clearly going to lead to more violations of human rights. There will be more abuse and mistreatment, whether physical or verbal, and less concern for people's well-being and due process. Spokespeople for the DHS, ICE, and CBP did not respond to interview requests and detailed inquiries about its recruitment strategies and officer misconduct. Recipe for disaster. Experts see the developments as reflective of larger systemic shifts. Cutting back on training goes along with the complete collapse of the rule of law in this country, Schuchart said, noting that Trump's immigration crackdown had relied on unconstitutional practices and illegal actions, including racial profiling in Los Angeles and unlawful deportations. You don't have to spend weeks teaching someone immigration law. If you've decided the law just means the president gets to deport anyone he wants. Direct monarchical rule, without law, doesn't require a lot of training by the king's foot soldiers. That lack of accountability is exacerbated by the erosion of oversight. Noem has shut down DHS oversight offices meant to uncover and prevent misconduct. Efforts that advocates said were already inadequate. They are rushing the hiring of these sensitive positions while gutting the institutions responsible for ensuring oversight and spewing incredibly dehumanizing rhetoric about the people who are subject to these policies, said Noah Schramm, policy strategist for the ACLU of Arizona. It's a recipe for disaster. Advocates are particularly worried about reductions in accountability as Trump deploys Border Patrol agents to cities, including Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. Border Patrol is not trained in crowd control, and some agents see themselves as a military force, said Reynolds. In L.A., Border Patrol agents were caught making false statements about protesters they arrested in June. A judge earlier this year also criticized the Border Patrol for conducting warrantless immigration stops, saying, "You just can't walk up to people with brown skin and say, 'Give me your papers.'" Reports of racial profiling by CBP and ICE in California have continued. There will be an increased level of civil rights violations, and the public has no recourse to address them, Rio said. Stacy Sue, program director at Detention Watch Network, an immigrants' rights coalition, said a vast expansion of ICE and CBP will have far-reaching consequences. No amount of training or slowing down hiring will address ICE's culture of secrecy and impunity, Sue said. What we're really concerned about is how difficult it is to shrink the system once it is expanded. This hiring spree will have a devastating impact on our communities for years to come. It means more people will be targeted and detained, more people will be coerced into detention to accept deportation, and violence inside prisons will get worse. Agency that handles green cards and citizenship to hire armed agents who can make arrests. The Trump administration announced a sweeping change to U.S. citizenship and immigration services, granting the agency new law enforcement powers. Traditionally, USCIS has handled immigration benefits, such as green card and citizenship applications, humanitarian relief, and naturalization interviews. It has not been tasked with arrests or deportation enforcement. Under a final rule taking effect within 30 days, USCIS will now be authorized to employ armed special agents with authority to carry firearms, execute warrants, make arrests, and investigate immigration fraud. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem signed the rule, calling it a step toward enhancing national security and integrity of the immigration system. USCIS Director Joseph Edlow stated the change would help prosecute immigration crimes, reduce fraud, and serve as a force multiplier for DHS and other law enforcement, including the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The agency plans to train several hundred agents to investigate fraud in applications and potentially arrest immigrants, attorneys, or others found complicit. DHS emphasized the rule aligns with fraud detection, public safety, and national security missions. Critics, however, strongly condemn the move. Doug Rand, a former USCIS senior official, argued that the agency has successfully investigated fraud for decades without armed agents. He described the decision as a dangerous escalation intended to intimidate applicants. Jason Hauser, a former DHS official, said the policy effectively shifts immigration enforcement in-house, leaving immigrants with fewer safe spaces to apply for legal status. He warned a chilling effect on those seeking lawful pathways. Immigrant advocates echoed these concerns. Nicole Meliku of the National Partnership for New Americans said the changes could scare eligible applicants from pursuing status adjustments, creating fear and mistrust toward an agency once seen as providing public services. The new rule forms part of a broader Trump administration agenda to expand enforcement and pursue mass deportations, reportedly aiming for 1 million removals annually. USCIS has also reinstated neighborhood investigations, allowing agents to interview applicants' neighbors or coworkers, a practice suspended since 1991. Additionally, updated guidance requires officers to review applicants' social media and consider anti-American ideologies or activities as negative factors in granting benefits. Supporters argue the changes are necessary to combat fraud and protect national security. Opponents warn they will discourage lawful immigration, erode trust, and blur the line between immigration services and enforcement. In effect, the video marks a historic shift. USCIS, once primarily a benefits agency, is now poised to play an active role in immigration enforcement, raising deep concerns over fairness, access, and the future of America's legal immigration system. Overall, these measures highlight a push toward a more militarized immigration system, sparking concerns about civil liberties, fairness for lawful immigrants, and the long-term direction of America's immigration framework. That is all for today in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later in the next video. Till then, take care.
USCIS to aid special agents with the new law enforcement authorities. The Trump administration is implementing sweeping changes to U.S. immigration policy, expanding enforcement powers and tightening requirements for citizenship. Under a new Department of Homeland Security rule, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will now employ special agents authorized to carry firearms, make arrests, execute warrants, and investigate immigration violations. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi and USCIS Director Joseph Edlow argued this shift strengthens national security, fraud detection, and public safety, while reducing reliance on ICE requirement, and a training of these agents will begin soon. At the same time, the administration is preparing to make the US citizenship test more difficult, with potential additions such as easy writing and standardized testing, which Edlow says will ensure a stronger attachment to constitutional values. Alongside USCIS changes, DHS is launching a massive requirement drive for 10,000 ICE officers and 3,000 CBP agents, offering a large signing bonuses and loan repayment. Critics warn rushed hiring could repeat past corruption, misconduct, and extremism. Critics warn rushed hiring could repeat past corruption, misconduct, and extremist inflation, reflecting Trump's broader push towards a militarized immigration system.